Why this appeals to me, or why I was drawn into, after my military career, into this work with energy and renewables, goes back to our experience in 2006 and 2007. From May, June, July, we saw a huge transformation in the war in Iraq, where American forces clearly were the targets. We were seen then as oppressors and not necessarily the liberators. And we got caught up in the civil war that was waiting to take place in Iraq. And because of the nature of the way we were fighting the fight in Iraq, we had very distant positioning of our forces. We had forward operating bases and combat outposts spread all over Iraq. And in order to maintain those forces, we had to supply them. The biggest product that was required for our support was diesel and water and liquids. And consequently, we had convoys every day going out to the farthest reaches of Iraq. And that's where they became victim or subject targets of what we were finding was this insidious form of improvised explosive devices, IEDs, mine warfare for another name. And our convoys were being increasingly hit because that represented our ability to do the fight. You know, the good news about the American military is it's the greatest, most effective military on the planet. The bad news is it takes a lot of energy for that force to fight. And as we look back over the decades, we see in World War II where it took about 1 gallon per soldier per day to fuel the operations in Europe for our allied forces. Fast forward to where we were in Iraq in 2006, 2007, that figure is now about 22 gallons per soldier per day to fuel our operations at a cost of anywhere from estimates of $50 a gallon to maybe as high as $200 a gallon of fuel to do that. But we needed that diesel fuel to run the generators. The generators were needed to run the air conditioning in the combat operations centers. We needed the electricity to run the repair tools. We needed electricity to run the surveillance cameras. We needed energy to recharge the radios, run the radios. It goes on and on and on and on. And so we have this great thirst for energy, which in turn drove us to bringing more and more and more liquid bulk refueling materials in the form of diesel and, as I said, in water. So in order to reduce that exposure, if you will, we went back to some of our own experience in 29 Palms, California, which in 2004 had the 4th largest photovoltaic field in the Department of Defense. We're only 50 miles from the Coachella Valley, where we have huge wind farms down there, and we said, look, why can't we just kind of re-engineer some of these technologies and bring in renewables? Let's see if we can take off-the-shelf technologies to get wind, to get solar. And in 2006, we submitted back through the chain of command back to Washington, D.C., a joint universal needs statement that really looked to go to commercial off-the-shelf technologies and import those. The idea is then to get our convoys, reduce our dependence on that diesel fuel, reduce the convoys, the number of convoys on the roads, and thereby build a little bit of force protection into the amount of requirements that we had on a daily basis to sustain those forces. And I think as we look in the future, this nature of distributed warfare is going to be with us for decades, and we are going to have increasingly forces that are spread over large geographical separations. So we need to find a way to support, to sustain, to provide the energy to these forces to be able to use all the great communications and weapon systems that we now need for our forces.